Welcome back to the DAMY vlog. Dr. David Duizer here. I'm a naturopathic doctor in Vancouver, British Columbia, and the medical director at DAMYhealth.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. On this show, we cover all things holistic health and wellness related. If you're interested in optimizing your health from a holistic standpoint, please subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. On today's show, we're talking about the risks of a vegan diet. The vegan diet in general is a good diet. It's healthy for most people. We know it can be very beneficial in the prevention of certain diseases. It has been shown to be helpful for the prevention of cardiovascular disease in particular. But it doesn't come without risks, like anything. From a holistic health standpoint, there are going to be some challenges, there are going to be some risks that you have to keep an eye out for. The vegan diet is no different than any other diet. It is a restrictive diet, which means we need to watch out for a few things. Today we'll be covering the 6 potential risks that you need to keep an eye out for when you begin a vegan diet. It's not complicated, but it's important to know these 6 risks. So on the first front, because it's an elimination diet, it's a restrictive diet, you have to watch out for B12 and iron deficiency. That's number 1 and number 2 on the risk list. B12 in particular, because our main source of B12 in a human diet would be an animal protein source. We can also get B12 from nutritional yeast, and our normal flora make B12 a little bit. It's important to be tested for B12 when you begin a vegan diet to see what your baseline level is, and then it's important to test, say, 4 to 6 weeks later to see what your level is like after not consuming any animal protein for a while. That's normally what I like to do. We know that the blood tests for B12 represent the actual blood level and not the tissue level of B12. We know that the nerve level is probably a little different. So whenever someone goes vegan, we like to keep the blood level on the high end. In Canada here, that reference range is about 150 to 600. We like to be closer to the 600 and above range for B12 in general. Normally, this is the only thing we are supplementing on a vegan diet without actually going deep into a person's health history or potential risk of disease. We just want to do B12 for sure when you begin a vegan diet. Secondarily, iron. Iron can go low on a vegan diet, especially if you're not eating a well-balanced diet. If you're not eating a significant number of beans, a significant amount of spinach, certain other food sources of iron can be very good, but they are not as good as animal sources of iron. We know there's a difference between heme iron and non-heme iron. Heme iron comes from animals. It raises the levels a lot quicker than non-heme iron. But anyways, you do not have to supplement iron on a vegan diet, but you need to be checked just to make sure. So usually if you eat a broad spectrum of nuts and seeds and green leafy vegetables, your iron levels are going to be just fine. But if your diet is lacking in variety, if you have heavy cycles, if you have a history of iron deficiency before going vegan, these are reasons to get your iron checked. Although when someone begins a vegan diet here in the clinic, we test their iron right away. We do a CBC, which is a complete blood count, which does hemoglobin, hematocrit, and then we also do ferritin, storage form of iron. So those are 2 deficiencies to check in with. Number 3 on the list of potential risks when you switch over to a vegan diet would be low protein intake for athletes. Now, a regular person who's doing moderate activity would need about 8 grams of protein per kg of body weight per day. So that's 8 grams of protein per kg of body weight per day as their minimum amount of protein intake. But an athlete would need about 1.0 grams per kg of body weight per day. So for athletes, sometimes when you go vegan, you actually have to calculate how much protein you're getting just to make sure you're hitting that 1.0 gram per kg mark. So for someone who weighs about 80 kgs, that's 80 grams of protein per day minimum for an athlete. So we really want to make sure we're checking protein intake with athletes who decide to go vegan just to make sure they're hitting that mark. I think that mark is important for recovery and for all the functions that we use protein for, which is basically all bodily functions, specifically recovery, because muscle is heavily comprised of protein, so it's something to check in with if you're an athlete and you've decided to go vegan. Number 4 on the list is protein requirements for someone who's just moderately active. If you're moderately active, it's that 8 grams per kg of protein. Usually that's per kg of body weight. Usually that's fine. You don't have to calculate that. But for someone who doesn't have a good diet, for someone who who is not conscious about what they're eating and is not hitting all of the different, concentrating on hitting all the different macros that are advised on a vegan diet, sometimes that protein is neglected. Sometimes they're just not big on chickpeas, they're not big on hemp seeds, they're not big on black beans, they're not eating a lot of soy products. And that can be an issue. So we have to check in with that. If you're someone who just does moderate activity, or say you're on a weight loss program, for example, and you're exercising frequently, and you've decided to go vegan, but you don't know that much about nutrition, or you haven't been focused on macronutrient content in the past. Macronutrient means proteins, carbs, fats. If that's not you, then maybe it'd be worth checking in with your protein intake when you transition to a vegan diet, just to make sure you're hitting the mark. Number 5 on the list of risks when you decide to go vegan to watch out for would be consuming too many carbs. A lot of people who go vegan end up eating too many carbs initially because they're not monitoring their macro intake. I mean people who transition to vegan and then all of a sudden are eating croissants for breakfast, who transition to vegan and then are having big bowls of pasta for dinner, even if it's brown rice pasta. They're just not checking in with their macronutrients. That's something to watch out for. If you're someone who's having 2 slices of bread at breakfast, again, a wrap or a sandwich at lunch, and then also having pasta at dinner, then there's potential for you to be surpassing your carbohydrate recommendation for the day, and that's something to check in with. That's a risk, because we know that when you consume too many carbs, your insulin requirements go up, which puts stress on the pancreas. It's also anabolic, makes you gain weight, pushes sugar into the cells, which, if you're not burning it off quick enough, will cause you to store fat. Something to watch out for is too many carbs. Another thing on this topic that we see sometimes is vegans getting really, really comfortable with their carb intake and transitioning sometimes from whole grains to white sources. For example, people eating a lot of whole grain bread and then just once in a while going for the white bread, once in a while going for the white buns. And that can creep in. That can take your levels up high. I know when I have gone vegan in the past, occasionally I've slipped into this croissant mode, I've slipped into the donut mode, I've slipped into the cinnamon bun mode, where once or twice a week, what's the big deal? Well, over time, that can become an issue. And vegans who get really, really comfortable with their carb intake, especially if their health is good and their weight is good, it's very common to slip into an overconsumption of carbohydrates, something to watch out for. Number 6 on the risks of going vegan, from my perspective clinically, has been the overconsumption of gluten-containing products. We know that some of these vegan products in the market, so many of them are really good. So many of them are bean sources. So many of them are organic soy sources. Some of them are simply wheat gluten. And for some people, that's no big deal. But for a lot of people, consuming too much wheat gluten can set off an immune response, an autoimmune response sometimes as well, but specifically an IgG-mediated immune response that causes inflammation in random places, can make you feel sluggish, can make you feel not yourself mood-wise, can make you feel pain, can cause lack of sleep, can cause stress, a whole bunch of different things. It's something to watch out for if you've transitioned to vegan and all of a sudden you find yourself consuming a lot of packaged foods, and then you're looking at the package and saying, oh shoot, the main ingredient here is wheat gluten. Like, this whole food is just wheat gluten. That's something to watch out for, because long term it could be bad for you. Everyone's a little different. But in the short term, we do notice symptoms acutely from consuming these type of foods. It really is something to just check in with. I put it on this risk list because I see it a lot. But again, people who come to see me are unwell. So people who are well sometimes are absolutely fine with consuming wheat gluten. It's not a big deal for them. So that might be you, but it's worth checking in with. Those are my 6 risks. Before I close today's video, I want to talk about a controversy that happens in the vegan community. The controversy that's most common would be around consuming soy, specifically organic soy. Organic soy, from all of the data we have, is probably very good for you. It seems like from everything that has come out that's evaluated organic soy, so I'm saying organic tofu and organic soy products without a significant number of other ingredients, the only place we really avoid it clinically is in postmenopausal hormone positive breast cancer, or postmenopausal hormone-positive cancer. The reason we do that is, despite the controversy, it is a phytoestrogen, so it will take up estrogen receptors. And for women who are postmenopausal, their natural release of hormones is down. So if they have a hormone-positive cancer, we're avoiding soy just to make sure those receptors are completely empty. Premenopausally, soy probably fills up those receptors and probably is preventative and probably good for reducing the impact of high estrogen on those receptors. In fact, the isoflavones in soy are generally considered to be very, very good as antioxidants on their own. So, clinically, we are only specifically avoiding soy in those periods, and I'm talking about organic soy and organic soy products with very few other ingredients. Overall, it's very low carb, it's very high in protein, and it's probably very good in all other cases. That's the myth I wanted to bust today, and that's how we use it clinically in my practice. So I'm very much for soy for increasing protein in vegans specifically. It doesn't need to be every day, it just needs to be once in a while to get that protein level up. One thing before I close the show is on the protein requirements, risk number 3 and 4. One thing I didn't mention was the complex of protein, the amino acid sources, the amino acid balance that we get from vegetable sources of protein. We have to make sure we're hitting all the marks and getting all of the required aminos in proper doses, making sure we're getting lots of different things. That is reached by eating a broad spectrum of foods, a broad spectrum of protein sources that are vegetarian or vegan. So in order to do that, it's important to not be a monofood vegan. Monofood vegans means those vegans who just eat one food every single day or the same food for every meal every single day. Do not be that. It's probably bad, and if you're not looking at your amino acid intake as a monofood eater, you could potentially be missing amino acids, which means you don't have a broad spectrum protein, which means certain bodily functions could be lacking. For example, the main amino acid in muscle is glutamine. The main amino acids we use in healing muscle, isoleucine, leucine, valine. You have to be hitting all of these marks, and the way to do that is to just eat a broad diet. Just have lots of different types of foods. So it's something to watch out for on those risk number 3 and 4, the protein intakes for athletes and for just regularly active people. That's the video for today for the DAMY vlog. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy holistic health and wellness videos, please subscribe to our channel. We're going to be doing a lot more of these videos. Again, I'm Dr. Duizer, and thanks for tuning in.